Welcome to another episode of TIDES. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome back Meriya Dyble, whose insights on organizational culture and leadership always leave us inspired. In fact, last time, we didn't just end with the podcast. We explored deeper conversations on how HR can better support the evolution of work in the face of disruptions that we are witnessing today. So today, we're diving into a scenario that feels futuristic, but in my opinion, it's closer than we think. We're talking about AI agents. AI agents have the potential of reshaping consumer decisions. Imagine this scenario. An AI agent goes to shop on your behalf, acting on your preferences, and handles purchasing decisions, efficiently comparing prices, reading reviews, and even responding to marketing campaigns in milliseconds. In this scenario, traditional strategies that appeal to emotions are no longer enough. Businesses now must market to algorithms. And this disruption isn't just for the marketing teams. The ripple effects of this are going to challenge every part of the organization. So in this scenario, how can HR lead the way in enabling teams like marketing to adapt to these seismic shifts? With Meriya's expertise, we'll explore actionable strategies to foster innovation in the face of such transformation. Meriya, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Fred. I was excited to continue the conversation and get a bit deeper.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So let's get started. Now, given your experience in HR and the exposure and experiences that you've had across organizations, across industries, to the way that things are done today, what would a marketing leader in this scenario expect from HR today to navigate these changes?
I think if marketing all of a sudden had agents taking on a large part of the work, the first thing that they'd likely be talking to HR about, unfortunately, would likely be downsizing. I think a lot of organizations are thinking about, with the age of AI and transactional work going away, all of a sudden we're going to free up time. And that actually means that we could free up people. And that gives us the opportunity to downsize our operations, get more efficient and have cost savings. And so I would expect that a lot of marketing leaders would be coming to HR to think about what is their new structure going to be and how can they reduce their costs while still delivering the same amount of value, because now they're partnering AI with their workforce.
And do you think, we're just talking about the current scenario. Even if in this scenario, marketing comes to HR for what you just talked about, do you think HR is currently set up to deliver this kind of support effectively?
I don't think so. I think many think that they are because we've done reorgs before, we've done cost cutting exercises, unfortunately, in many organizations. And so I think a lot of HR professionals think, well, I'm ready to do this. I know how to make cuts. I know how to make packages. I know how to reorganize the workforce. But it's really short-sighted to think that way, because this actually provides us an opportunity as business leaders to think about what is the real value that we can point AI agents at? What's the problems that we're trying to solve? And then what's the best way that we can use them to help solve those problems and free up people's time? But what that does is it gives us a whole opportunity to think about how we're going to leverage that time to actually deliver more value for our customers. And it's the humans that are going to come up with the more creative ways that we can do that. So we might have a primary way that we're serving our customers now, but in the future, now that we've freed up people to actually give them time to be strategic and be creative and collaborate differently, who knows what they'll come up with? And if they're only thinking about saving their jobs, or they're only still strapped because you've cut the workforce and AI is doing some things, but we still have so little workforce that people can't actually have the time to be strategic, we're not actually getting the entire value that we could from, again, just freeing up that workforce. So I think it's very short-sighted to be thinking about cutting back when you actually haven't even realized the full opportunity in front of you in terms of the value that can be created with that new time and effort. And on top of that, all of the other things that you need to consider when you're thinking about introducing things like AI agents when it comes to, ethical decision making, and, they can go through and reduce that cognitive load when it comes to the data and the insights and making decisions, but you still need humans in the back of that to really ensure they're making the right decisions and that they've considered all of the implications from just a humanistic qualitative aspect.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And sometimes I feel even when we talk about AI making ethical choices and decisions, but in this situation, you're talking about a marketing team coming to HR to say, let's downsize. I wonder what HR leans on to make those decisions around who to keep and who to let go. Because from my experiences, data insights and analytics is not a very strong practice in HR. It's still relatively new, just a few years old. So even understanding the full human, full skills, full aspirational landscape of your people is such a huge opportunity for HR teams to lean on to make those kind of informed choices and decisions. Because as we get into this future, after we figured out what's the right makeup of our organization, even if it's just one department in the organization, we still have to make choices around who do we best keep in our ecosystem, not for the needs of today, but where we're going in the future, which is still undefined and unknown.
Yeah, well, there's not many HR organizations that are actually using the full capabilities of the AI agents that are in their HR tools. So if I think of Workday or Docebo, or there's all these platforms that are coming out with new AI opportunities to help the HR function really think about their talent differently. And again, in an unbiased way. We have all these performance reviews and performance systems and things set up that are, because of the way that the system is built around humans and our own unconscious bias, is rife with issues in terms of who we think are high performers and who aren't, and who maybe have the skills in order to continue to meet the needs of our customers into the future. And so the better that we can be about using the AI within our own HR tools to help us not only navigate the future forecast based on our growth projections and all of these things, they can help do that for us, which is fantastic. But what are the skills that we're going to need in the future? And who actually has ancillary skills that we could be building? And so if I'm thinking about the marketing function, they could actually go into things like even into HR. There's many different ways from a communication standpoint, change management, employer brand, but also customer service. So there's many things that people bring to the table that are ancillary to maybe what we are thinking about. And it's these systems and these agents that will actually be able to fine tune and pick out all of the nuances for us so that we don't have people using their bias and picking who's going to be continuing and who's not. We actually have systems that are helping us identify those people in more unbiased ways and in more functional ways, and actually in a better business context than we could as humans. And so if we could use those insights and we could use those tools ourselves to help feed up the information that the marketing department will need, it will just make us better business partners. Again, though, with all of that going back to human qualitative judgment and intuition and understanding the impact of our actions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's zoom for a second into this, again, the impacts of this hypothetical scenario on the marketing department and its people. One, can you highlight a couple of impacts on people, given if the marketing team transitioning into this future state where, humans are not doing what they were doing to sell to other humans. Now they have to rewire their entire organization so that the marketing team can market and sell to machines on the other end who are making buying decisions. What would be the impacts on the team from a people perspective? And based on that, can you paint a picture of what should that ideal partnership between marketing and HR look like as we embark into this unknown future?
Absolutely. I was thinking about this case study as you put it forth, and it's so interesting because I go back to, Marketing 101, and anybody who's taken a marketing course has likely learned about I think it was Dole or Christie, but one of the cookie companies basically came up with the idea of the 100-calorie cookie packs. And if you think about it, the 100-calorie cookie packs don't actually make rational sense. It costs you more to have less because it's already been packaged. And so, a bot would likely say, well, that doesn't make sense, right? We're not going to do that. People aren't going to buy that. Actually, the AI is not going to buy that because they know that you're buying more for less, you're paying more. but we know that parents do buy it because, it helps us with less decisions. It like holds us to the calories that we want to do. It's easy to throw in lunch boxes. There's all these reasons that it's problems to solve that humans understand, but the AI agents won't yet, even with the AI agents that are making decisions. And so when I think about that example and I go to this case study, I think we're going to have to start to help the marketing function think about what are those human problems to solve that the marketing function isn't getting enough time to think about yet because of all the tactile, the day-to-day functional things that just bogging them down. And now that that's being cleared off their plates, how are you going to have them starting to think differently, starting to think bigger, starting to think more creatively? How are you getting them to really deeply understand the problems to solve for customers and what skills do they need and where do they need to be? So maybe all of a sudden we're actually sending more humans into grocery stores, right? To just talk to parents and to whoever's buying the groceries at that point. And they'll be able to bring that back and feed it into the data and the AI who's actually seeing what's been purchased after the fact at the till. And you can put those two things together to create a really humanistic picture. And there's all these opportunities that humans are going to be able to dive into, and they're going to need different skills. We'll have marketing people that were designers, maybe, that were there to make things beautiful. And now we have AI agents who are doing that in half the time. But can the AI agent really know whether somebody's going to be attracted to, the wallpaper behind me, for example? Would an AI agent have bought that for me? Maybe not. My husband probably would have been involved in all of these other things, but that's what I liked. And so I ended up buying it. So there's something there in terms of how we understand humans and the skills that we're going to need in order to deeply listen to humans in qualitative ways. Because we can look at data and we rationally know, we can say this is what a human's going to do, but humans are irrational beings. And so it will take humans and other types of skills for them to marry that qualitative data with the quantitative data the AI agents are bringing forward. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but I bet you a lot of marketing leaders, if they are given the time and space to have a facilitated conversation around what is the strategy of the organization, what's our real differentiator, what are the problems that we're solving for customers, how are we not doing that yet, what opportunities do we have? Then they can start to think about, great, so if we clear the space on the things that the AI agents can do, what's left? And how are we really going to double down on those skills and build those up with the people that we have within our organization? And maybe that's going to mean that we're giving more time for learning and development because we're always going to have to be on. It's going to be moving so quickly. First it was big language processing, then it was AI, now it's AI agents. And this is happening every year, there's something new that's coming at us. And so as leaders, we have to constantly be thinking about how we're curating new paths for people to be learning new skills and trying those skills and being safe to be uncomfortable and thinking about how we're testing our new skills to actually grow capability. So a lot of what we're going to be doing is thinking about building environments to bring out the best in people and have them continue to grow. And then also just asking hard questions, right? Like, so are those AI agents going to bring bias that we haven't really understood into their purchasing? Or, I think about procurement. So let's say right now there's somebody that's buying, the wood for homes. And they've made a value judgment that they're only going to buy wood that, is ethically sourced and all of these things. And so you can set up an AI agent to do that, but will it track, right? Like, what's the critical thinking that's going behind? It's telling us one thing, but if you dig a bit deeper, we actually know something different. And again, I think that will be the humans that are going back and using their critical thought to really dig deeper based on the new level of information that's getting brought up by the agents. And constantly having to go back and check about the decisions that are being made. We know that the world of data is rife with misinformation, and it's no different in a business. And so as HR leaders, I think we need to really start building our critical thinking, understanding our own data, understanding our own ability to bring our unique skills and expertise when it comes to humans and change management and that learning journey that they're going to have to go on, how we support leaders, and just really getting people to take the time to ask the questions and really think about the impact of the decisions that we're making. And not just for the business, but it really if you think about putting people first when it comes to efficiency, for example, you can reduce their workload. You can give them more time to be strategic and creative. That enhances your employee experience. And if you're focusing on those benefits, all of a sudden people are coming along on the journey with you and offering up new ways that they could do AI versus, fighting you. But again, you have to be intentional and thoughtful and really make sure that you're taking the time to understand how this is going to impact people, whether it's customers or whether it's your team members. You really need to be thoughtful about that.
Yeah. Very well said, Meriya. And what I'm also taking away from this is that the timing of this conversation between the business teams like marketing and HR is also very important, because to your point, there's so much to be done, because we are not just making decisions like who to keep, who to let go, which are right now being done in a very transactional way. It's more around redesigning, restructuring the entire department, because the purpose of and the value that department brings to the organization is going to significantly shift. So HR cannot wait for the marketing team to come knocking on their doors to say, hey, now we are ready. Come help support us, because then we get into that transactional relationship between the business and HR teams. But what I'm hearing from you as you painted this scenario is that HR teams need to be at the table when the inception of the change is happening versus when decisions and choices for the change have been made.
Yeah, absolutely. And helping really think about a year out from now. We don't want to make decisions that we're going to regret, 6 months down the road. We decided to, maybe get rid of half of the marketing department because we think that AI agents can do this. And all of a sudden we realize we have this huge opportunity and we're hiring back half the size of the, department again, with the skills that we could have been building that whole entire time for half the cost and, creating a great employee experience and using that as an example to shine for the rest of the organization about why they would want their departments now involved in something like this, putting their hands up to be who's next versus, trying to hide and hoping that their department's not going to get the axe. So I think that, to your point, the more that we can get business leaders partnering and thinking about the entire organization and asking these questions and facilitating these conversations about the what if down the road, and going along on the journey together and having all of those different perspectives coming to the table, whether it's IT, people and culture, marketing. It doesn't matter where you sit. You could have an idea or a question that will actually spark the business thinking differently. And so it's really about having those conversations together and then continuing the conversation together versus going in a room, doing it separate, and then saying, okay, I have something for you to do. And so I really encourage HR leaders. This is a time to be confident but humble, right? Be confident in the expertise that you bring to the table when it comes to thinking about things like bias and workforce planning and facilitating conversations and tricky conversations. And then be humble enough to know you don't need to know everything. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to be an AI expert. You can also ask questions and say, I'm not sure. And just build that trust with your peers that you're going in the journey together and that you're also not going to come and surprise them that they're going to have to make these cuts. Because that also happens at times, right? It might not be the marketing leader coming to people and culture saying that. It might be people and culture coming and saying, you need to reduce your workforce. And so the more that we can have those conversations together and just keep things like the words of reducing the workforce out a bit, that might be an outcome down the road. But that should be one of the very last things that you're thinking about, because there's all this other opportunity that you could be leveraging if you're not putting that as an outcome or an activity that you need to do right off the bat.
I'm wondering who in people and culture or HR teams, depending on the organizational nomenclature and anatomy of different organizations, would have this discussion with the marketing leadership. It would be the HR business partner for those organizations that do have a people partner practice. Would that be the person talking to the business, or should it be other stakeholders from people and culture or HR teams having that first touch point with marketing teams or any other functional areas in the business today? Because AI is not happening tomorrow. AI has already happened.
Yeah. From what I've seen, the HR operations, people and culture operations, the ones that are actually interacting and implementing AI within their own HR functions. They're doing the work days and using things in, recruitment and talent acquisition to actually reduce the number of transactional tasks and all these things that are more articulate, I guess, when it comes to what the advantages might be. And so the business partner knows the business and should be there with the data and helping informing decision makings and helping them thinking about down to the future. I think there's a gap in some of our business partners and their ability to articulate what that opportunity and facilitate that conversation with the business. And so it's actually a good opportunity for people and culture to come together and say, who understands this? Who's thinking about it? How do we get our internal functions working together to really strengthen all of us so that we can show up strong at the table? And regardless of your title, if you understand AI and you understand the implications and you're good at asking those questions and you're part of the business and understand it, then great, come to the table and participate in the discussion and help your peers learn that as well. I think that as we continue to grow and HR continues to evolve as its own function, I would expect that the business partners are going to move into people that are thinking about those more strategic conversations and are using all the functions more effectively to hold them with the business. I just don't know how much your regular HR departments are already set up for that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally hear you. In fact, one of the things that stood out as you were describing and painting the scenario from a HR perspective to me was that if the jobs or the roles of humans that are in that marketing department are changing, that means somebody has to look at how work is being done today and how would it be effectively done tomorrow? Now, that's no one person who is going to solve for that because the business has to weigh in on painting the future state scenario. But at the same time, what do you think about HR showing up with newer skills and new capabilities to come to the table to say, hey, marketing or sales or customer support, you are thinking about embedding AI into your ecosystem. Let's do workshops. Let's analyze the workflows. Should HR be upskilling themselves in doing things like workflow analysis, workflow redesign?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I would hope that a large amount of the HR functions have already been thinking about employee experience and creating employee journeys and thinking through how are we going to create the right process for, things like onboarding. What HR partner hasn't created an onboarding program at some point? So we have the skills already to think about, okay, from the business, we have SMEs that come and give us the information we need in order to create the best onboarding for that specific function, role, whatever it might be. This is really no different, right? It's like using those facilitation skills, asking really great questions, setting up the environment for people to feel confident and trust so that they can be uncomfortable and put themselves out there as they learn. These are all things that the HR function, should be great at because we do it all the time, whether it's from a learning or change management or whatever the case might be. And so absolutely, I would say, think about how you're going to facilitate a conversation. You don't need to have all the answers, but you need to be able to help people ask the right questions in order to get to the answers with them. You need to create that space that's safe. You need to think about how you can make it real. Right now, everything's very ideal, right? Or it's theoretical for people. So the more, again, that if you have examples within the HR function that you've actually applied something and it's worked, or you've learned something, or maybe it didn't work and you learned something even better, bring those to the table and give examples of that so that people can make meaning from your learnings and actually think about how they're going to do that for themselves. Mm-hmm. So building those skills within HR to be a facilitator again, going back to those whiteboarding sessions. Yeah. We used to always talk about, whiteboarding, great. We want people back in the office so that they can collaborate and they can communicate. Well, those are real skills. Putting people in front of a whiteboard does not ideation make. We have design thinkers. We have all of these ways that we know that we can actually make that time together more fruitful and more valuable. So build those skills now because they will be indispensable as the time goes on and constantly reused because the world is evolving at such a quick pace to our point earlier. And so the more that you can help people feel like they're evolving with it, the better.
Yeah, yeah. And I also feel this is the time to borrow from all other domains that HR probably or people practices didn't have to lean on. Like Six Sigma is beautiful to do workflow for analysis. There are so many frameworks and methodologies that are very easy to understand and leverage and lean on. Borrow from the world of marketing. I mean, at the end of the day, both people, culture teams and marketing are aiming for behavior change. So the practices they use for solving for customers, clients, and external facing humans, we can adapt and modify those to solve for internal facing human beings as well in an organization. So this is such an exciting time to be thinking outside the box and trying to apply problem solving to a situation versus this is how we do instructional design or this is how we do any of those people and culture practices. We don't have to be married to tried and tested approaches.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, like product development, thinking about how we work in agile ways, how we test things quickly, fail fast. How do you gather requirements really effectively and understand and test all those things? Those are all skills that have been out in the world of work for a long time that regardless of what function you're in, you could be using to actually make your work better.
Absolutely. So talking about the impacts, again, going back to how this one AI agentic development is going to impact the marketing team, what specific HR processes that are established today, like performance, management, learning, recruitment, will be most affected from your opinion? And are there policies or systems that HR needs or people and culture teams need to rethink entirely to support marketing through this?
Yeah, I definitely think performance systems are going to get flipped on their heads. We're going to just be thinking about the world of performance differently because all of a sudden, how do you evaluate somebody's performance where 40% of their job is actually collaborating with an AI agent? I don't know that we have the systems and tools for doing that just yet. And how do we evaluate whether they're collaborating effectively in a way that makes sense, that drives value and all of these things? So I'm sure we'll be learning all of that. But I think workforce management and this idea of being able to forecast for company growth is probably one of the biggest opportunities for HR professionals and organizations, but also what's going to feel very tricky. Like we can't plan for it because we don't know how much of the AI is going to be taking the function and then how many people we're going to need. And so we really need to get better at being able to sort of at least give our best hypothesis and thinking about, well, what insights are we going to be looking at and what leading indicators are going to help us know that it's going to be, anywhere from 10% growth to 40% growth that we're going to need. And in that 10% growth, what are the skills? So we analyze the actual skills that we're going to need in order to have that growth that we're looking for a year from now so that we can make plans to get the organization prepared and ready to have capability in those skills. So I think performance, definitely workforce planning, and then skill maturity is what should be on the minds of most HR departments and always has been. Yeah. I mean, those are the things that the best HR leaders do strategically. They help the business understand those pieces. I just think it's become a lot more nimble. Like we used to have huge job architectures or, learning paths. The amount of times that in my career a decade ago that I created learning paths that if somebody asked me for a learning path now and say, are you crazy? By the time I build this thing, it will be obsolete. Yeah. So it's not necessarily about a whole learning path. It's more about, okay, we know that these are the skills, and so we need to start building towards those skills. And the level of capability in those skills will be growing as we evolve. And we'll have to keep on taking information and continuing to think about where we might need to pivot or whatever the case may be. So using that data and constantly looking at reorganizing and thinking about what that's telling us and what that's going to mean and have meaning for versus thinking that we can create something. It's a once and done. We'll launch it and we'll revisit it in a year. We can't work like that anymore. And so being more agile in your planning, but that doesn't mean not planning. In fact, it means asking better questions and thinking about the purpose of the organization and being even more specific about the bets that you're making and the guardrails that you're having so that you can be more specific in what skills you're going after, or else you'll just get overwhelmed with the amount of opportunity in front of you.
And I also think like this is the time when HR can be thinking about embedding AI as an intelligence in their own ecosystem. Like those competency frameworks, skill frameworks, to your point, were like a huge, heavy undertaking. And by the time we were done with that, they were already outdated. But now if we leverage and lean on AI and the tools that are at our fingertips, we can still leverage that information. Those skills is also a data signature, data signal, a data point. We can now just throw resumes into any of those generative AI tools and ask the tool to make sense of it. Partner with IT. I think we can build internally as well these nimble, soft systems to solve for those specific contextual needs. So this is a great opportunity for HR to be thinking about what didn't work. What were the shackles that we had that didn't let us move forward or didn't let us be that strategic partner to the business that we can solve for today.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, resumes are one thing, but on LinkedIn, you can see your organization out of 100 people, 75 are on LinkedIn. Imagine if you just had that information from LinkedIn, because there's all this other things that they might be talking about, the certificates, they might be on a board at some point, but you don't know that on their resume because you only have the resume from the day that they started versus, they've continued to grow and evolve in all these different ways. And if you can use technology to leverage that, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, Shweta actually really likes AI and is building her skills in these things, but she's in the HR department. We didn't know that she had all these technical skills and process development and that she could help us think through what are the steps that we should be taking to do this. But the information just got fed up to me as a business leader. So all of a sudden I have insights into my workforce. Again, that's not biased by the leaders and all of these perceptions and opinions of people. It's really what's just been fed up to be true. And so I think that just gives us really great opportunities to unleash our workforces in different ways.
Yeah, that's right. That's so true. And also helps us look at the human in a work environment beyond their job title and where they sit in the org chart. That has been such a big pain point for decision making and building talent fluidity in the organization so that the right person is identified to do the right piece of work at the right time in an organization. This is such exciting times.
Yeah.
All right. With all of this comes immense amount of change. So would you have any tips or guidance for specifically for HR teams as they navigate these changes? Like, is there a framework, a methodology that they can lean on for adapting their function, the people and culture function or HR function to meet the evolving needs of the business?
I don't know about one framework. I would say that, you really hit the nail on the head. It's all about change. And what we know fundamentally about change management is that it goes back to we're adults at work and we need to know why. We want to be taken along the journey. And in lack of information, people make things up. And when people make things up, it's not generally kind. So unfortunately, we go down paths that aren't kind to ourselves and or kind to others. And so like change management 101 is taking people along on the journey, making sure that they have the right information, that you've set up the rituals to consistently give them the information and help them learn and reinforce their learning and celebrate the journey that we're on, not just the end game, and getting them involved in the conversation. Nobody wants to know that leaders went into a room and are going to decide their future and then come back and tell them what it is, right? Like, we want to participate in that. We want autonomy. We know that our mental health depends on us being able to make decisions and have some control as adults. And so I think that, again, within the HR function, bringing everyone along on the journey, making sure that they're asking questions, that you're enabling them to learn, that it's a safe place to try new things and that you're sharing that with one another. And then you're doing that on a macro level with the larger organization as well. You're clearing the space for people to show up as their best selves because they feel safe to do so. They feel like they belong and they feel like they're going to be part of the solution versus, an outcome of them as just a resource that can be cut like any other resource. And so I think that the more that we can really focus on what I said before, it's about putting people first.
Mm-hmm.
Putting the humans in your organization and the customers that you're solving problems for first, and then putting efficiency second. Because that will be an outcome of solving the problems and making a better experience will be efficiency. Because nobody wants to go to work and like do something that's transactional, data entry or whatever the case may be 50 times a day. That's not the part of their job that they love. That's not the value that they feel they create for the organization or for customers. So really come at it from a frame of this is about humans and augmenting humans. And if you can keep that at the core of what you do and how you share that information and how you set people up for success, you will be successful as a business.
Well said. So as we wrap up our episode today, which was packed with so many insights that you shared with us today, what would be one or two things that you would give to our people who are listening to the show, most likely who are in people and culture HR teams, that they should be thinking about doing today so that they can support and do all things that you are highlighting that they should be helping and supporting the business with?
I would say don't wait. Don't wait for your leaders to say, hey, what are we going to be doing about AI? Start to think about it. Start to thinking about what the implications would be for your organization and where you see the opportunities for things like AI agents and where that might make most sense for you as a business. And then think, okay, so what are the questions that we're going to need to be asking ourselves and what sort of ethical considerations might there be? The more prepared you can be, whether they're starting the conversation or you're starting the conversation, the better you'll be to a partner for them. And so don't wait. Start doing it. Start thinking about it. Start learning about it. But specifically within the context of your business so that you can show up as a strong partner. And certainly, if you haven't already, start using it within the HR function and thinking about how you're going to be an example for the rest of the organization.
Well said. Thank you for joining us for this episode of TIDES. A huge thanks to Meriya for her invaluable insights on navigating the complexities of HR in a world shaped by AI. And in this situation, the scenario we talked about was agentic AI. Today, we explored how marketing disruptions challenges HR to lead with purpose, innovation, and empathy. And these aren't just challenges, they are opportunities to shape the future of work. We hope that you're leaving with some actionable ideas and fresh perspectives. Thanks again, Meriya.
Thanks for having me.
And listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to TIDES, share it in your network, and let us know your thoughts. How are you preparing for an AI-driven future? Until next time, stay curious and keep leading the way.